The first time I saw Arindra, she was standing in the ruins of the world I had helped destroy. Ash drifted through the violet sky like snow. The twin suns of Ashalon burned dim behind a veil of orbital debris, shattered defense platforms, broken cruisers, and the remains of the human fleet that had come as saviors and left as conquerors. The air tasted of iron and something sweeter, almost floral. Ashalon's oceans had once exhaled that scent. Now they steamed in toxic silence. I had been ordered down to the surface as part of a diplomatic delegation. Reconstruction, they called it. Stabilization. Words polished smooth enough to hide the blood beneath. My boots sank into gray powder that had once been a city of living crystal. The Ashaloni built their homes from grown structures, towers like spiraled shells, translucent and luminous. I had seen archived images. What remained were jagged ribs jutting from a flattened landscape. And there she stood among them, tall, luminous, her skin reflecting hues of blue and silver. Filaments of light traced delicate patterns across her arms and throat, pulsing faintly like distant stars. Her eyes were not human eyes. They were layered, multifaceted, holding depths that made me feel small and fragile. She looked directly at me, not at the insignia on my uniform, not at the soldiers behind me, at me. "You are Commander Adrian Vale," she said in flawless Terran standard. Her voice was music strained through grief. I answered. "I am Arindra of the High Conclave." She stepped closer, the ash swirling around her bare feet. "And I remember you." The word struck harder than any accusation, because I remembered her too. 5 years earlier, before the war, I had been part of the first contact team assigned to Ashalon. Back then, the planet had shimmered with bioluminescent forests and floating citadels suspended by gravitational harmonics we barely understood. I was an astrophysicist before I was a soldier. I had volunteered for diplomacy because I believed in bridges between stars. Arindra had been my counterpart. She had studied human history with unnerving intensity. She knew our myths, our revolutions, our music. She once quoted ancient earth poetry while we walked through a forest of crystal-leafed trees. "You are a species of longing," she had said. "You reach outward because you fear the silence within." "And what are you?" I had asked. "We are a species of memory," she replied. "We do not forget." At the time, it sounded beautiful. Now, it felt like a warning. Back then, there had been laughter, shared meals, long discussions beneath the auroral currents that rippled across Ashalon's night sky. I had told her about Earth's oceans. She had taken me to the edge of hers, where the water glowed in iridescent waves. There had been something growing between us, something neither of us named, an understanding that crossed biology and language. Then the signals came. Unidentified vessels at the edge of the system. Hostile. Silent. The Ashaloni had no standing military. Their technology was advanced but oriented toward creation, not destruction. Humanity, hardened by centuries of conflict, responded differently. The Terran Council offered protection. Protection in exchange for alliance. Alliance in exchange for access to Ashalon's energy cores, to their gravitational technology, to the secrets humming beneath their oceans. I sat in on the negotiations. I argued for transparency, for caution, but fear is persuasive, and the unknown vessels grew closer. In the end, I cast the deciding vote within our delegation. Authorize orbital defenses. Deploy human fleet assets. Secure the planet. I told myself it was the only way. The unidentified vessels never attacked. They turned away the moment the human armada entered Ashalon's orbit. Later, intelligence would classify them as automated probes, ancient relics drifting through space, broadcasting nothing but static. But by then, our ships were already in position. By then, the Council had already seen what Ashalon possessed. By then, protection had quietly shifted to occupation. The Ashaloni resisted, not with weapons but with refusal. They would not share their core technologies. They would not surrender control of their energy wells. The first skirmish was an accident. The second was not. And then there was no stopping it. I watched from the command deck as human cruisers fired upon orbital structures that had never been designed for war. I gave orders I will hear in my sleep until I die. When the planetary shields collapsed, the crystal cities below shattered like fragile glass. Ashalon burned because I had opened the door. Now, 5 years later, I stood before Erindra again. The Conclave had agreed to conditional peace. The human occupation would transition to joint governance. Reconstruction would begin. The Council had sent me as a symbol of reconciliation. A cruel joke. "You chose this," she said softly, gesturing to the wasteland around us. "I chose to defend you," I replied, though the words felt thin. Her eyes darkened. "Do you still believe that?" Silence stretched between us, heavy with ghosts. "I believed we faced extinction," I said at last. "Those vessels were empty," she finished. "We learned that too late." A wind rose, carrying ash across the broken skyline. "You sacrificed our world for your fear," she said. "And what would you have had me do?" I demanded, more sharply than I intended. "Ignore a potential threat? Risk both our species." "I would have had you trust us," she said. "As we trusted you." The words cut deeper than any accusation, because trust had been the thing we once shared most. Over the following weeks, I worked alongside Ashaloni engineers in the ruins of their capital. We established atmospheric scrubbers, stabilized tectonic fractures caused by orbital bombardment, and began rebuilding the crystalline frameworks of their homes. Erindra was always there, observing, advising, judging. At night, when the work crews rested, we sometimes walked among the reconstruction sites. The bioluminescent forests were gone, replaced by skeletal growth chambers where new structures slowly formed. "You have aged," she said one evening. "So have you." She inclined her head. "We do not age as you do, but we change." I studied her luminous markings. They seemed dimmer than before. "Why did you agree to peace?" I asked. "For my people," she answered. "Vengeance would not restore what was lost." "And for yourself?" Her gaze met mine, steady and unyielding. "For answers." We stopped at the edge of a crater that had once been the Conclave Hall. Its depths glowed faintly where molten crystal had cooled into twisted shapes. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Every day." "That is not what I asked." I hesitated. Regret implied I would choose differently if given the chance. Would I? If I returned to that moment, the unknown vessels approaching, the fear in the council chamber, would I defy orders? Risk being wrong? I didn't know. "I regret the outcome," I said finally. Her expression hardened. "That is not the same." The turning point came 3 months into reconstruction. Ashalon's core, an immense energy matrix beneath the planet's crust, began to destabilize. Human bombardment had fractured its harmonic balance. Without correction, the planet would tear itself apart within a year. The Ashaloni had once maintained the core through a network of living conduits, individuals psychically attuned to its frequencies. Most of them had died when the Conclave Hall fell. Erindra was one of the few remaining conduits. "We can stabilize it," she told me in the underground chamber where the core pulsed like a captive star. "But it will require a human interface as well." "Why a human?" "Because your weapons altered its resonance. It now responds to your neural patterns." I stared at the seething light below us. What does the interface involve? She met my eyes. It will require a sacrifice. The procedure was explained in clinical terms by both Ashaloni scientists and human engineers. 2 minds linked directly to the core. One to guide its harmonic restoration. One to absorb the destructive feedback. The second mind would not survive. We can find a volunteer, I said immediately. Irindra's luminous markings flared. There is no time to train another. And the core is already attuned to you. Because I ordered the bombardment. Yes. The chamber vibrated with distant tremors. If we do nothing, she continued, Ashalon dies. If we attempt stabilization without a human anchor, the feedback will kill every conduit linked to the core. How many? 17. The number echoed in the vast chamber. And if I serve as the anchor? You will die, she said simply, and the core will stabilize. 17 lives for one. A planet for a man. It should have been an easy decision. But death is rarely abstract when it wears your own face. The night before the procedure, I stood alone on a balcony overlooking the partially rebuilt city. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across scaffolds and growth chambers. In the distance, I could hear Ashaloni voices singing, a low, resonant melody meant to soothe the planet's tremors. Irindra joined me. You have chosen, she said. Yes. You do not hesitate? Of course I hesitate. I let out a bitter laugh. I'm terrified. That is understandable. We stood in silence for a moment. Why you? She asked quietly. You could have ordered another. Because I remember what I sacrificed, I said. And this time, I want it to be mine. Her breath caught, a faint shimmer passing over her skin. You think this will absolve you? No, I said. But it might balance the scales. She turned to face me fully. Humans speak often of balance, she said, as if suffering can be measured and repaid. Can't it? Her gaze was infinitely sad. No, the core chamber was blinding. Energy surged in cascading waves of white and violet. The air thrummed with power that made my bones ache. Irindra stood opposite me on a crystalline platform. Conduit filaments extended from her spine, connecting to the core's lattice. Similar interfaces waited for me. Once we begin, she said, there is no reversal. I nodded. The filaments pierced my skin with searing pain. Light flooded my vision. My thoughts shattered into fragments of memory. Earth's blue oceans, Ashalon's glowing forests, the moment I gave the order to fire. The core roared. I felt Irindra's mind brush against mine. Vast, luminous, carrying centuries of memory. Guide it, she whispered across the link. The feedback struck like a star-going supernova. Agony beyond anything I had known tore through me. I felt my neural pathways burning, unraveling. But beneath the pain, I sensed the core's chaotic resonance beginning to align. Images flashed between us, her people before the war, children playing in crystal gardens, elders singing beneath the auroras. Then another image. Me, standing in the conclave hall years ago, promising protection. The irony was almost unbearable. The feedback intensified. My vision darkened to the edges. And then it stopped. The core's roar softened to a steady, harmonious pulse. I collapsed. I woke to dim light and the scent of something floral. For a moment I thought I was dead. Then I felt the weight of my own body. Irindra sat beside me. You are alive, she said. I noticed. My voice was hoarse. The feedback was diverted, she continued. How? She hesitated. I altered the flow at the final moment. You said that was impossible. It was improbable. Cold realization crept through me. What did you do? She looked into my eyes, and in them I saw exhaustion deeper than any I had known. I absorbed the excess. My heart stuttered. That should have killed you. It nearly did. I struggled to sit up. Pain flared, but it was distant compared to the terror rising in my chest.
Why?
I demanded. Her luminous markings were faint now, barely visible. Because, she said softly, you were not the only one who remembered. Silence filled the chamber. You chose to sacrifice yourself, she continued. Not out of duty, not out of fear, but out of love for a world you once helped harm. I had no words. She reached out, her hand warm against mine. She looked into my eyes and asked, Do you remember what you sacrificed? She said quietly, echoing the question she had asked me months before. I do, I whispered. You sacrificed certainty.
Power.
Your future. And you?
I asked.
She smiled faintly. I sacrificed my anger. Outside the chamber, I could feel it, the steady, living pulse of Ashelon's restored core. The planet would survive.
So would she. So would I.
But neither of us would be unchanged. Will your people ever forgive mine? I asked. She considered this. Forgiveness is not a single act, she said. It is a process, as rebuilding is. And us. A long pause. We are also rebuilding, she replied. Above us, the twin suns rose over a world scarred but alive. Crystal structures began to glow once more, faint at first, then brighter. I had once sacrificed a planet for fear. Now I would spend the rest of my life protecting it, not as conqueror, not as savior, but as partner. Irindra helped me to my feet.
Come, she said.
There is much to repair. And this time, when she looked into my eyes, I did not see accusation. I saw possibility.